Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode on Swish City. We're breaking down our power rankings leading up to the season, going over every single team, ranking them from 30 to 1, going over their additions, subtractions, who they brought back, players I like and dislike on the roster with fit wise, and my overall record prediction for each team. Today's episode, we're going to be getting into our 10th team breaking down getting into the season on Media Day today. As you guys can tell from the title, you guys can tell from the thumbnail, we are going to be discussing the Charlotte Hornets. And that's right, ladies and gentlemen, this Charlotte Hornets team is exciting, is enticing, has some young pieces and players, and if they can remain healthy, I think could do some immense work in this Eastern Conference towards that play-in and bottom of the playoffs. So we're going to dive in, look at this team, and go over all of their additions, subtractions, who they kept, players I like, dislike, with their fit, and overall my record prediction for this team. So without further ado, let's dive into it. First, we're going to be discussing who this team brought back, who they added, and who they lost. And this Charlotte Hornets team went through a ripping through of their franchise through the last season and a half. Throughout last season, leading into the trade deadline, this Hornets team made some moves, trading away Gordon Hayward, bringing in some younger guards, and Trey Mann and Vasily Misic, and also going out and trading away PJ Washington and bringing in guys like Grant Williams, Seth Curry, and Ness. This was to set the Hornets into a we're stripping it down, we're rebuilding, we understand, we're selling off some of our cap, but we're bringing in some guys to help embody our culture, to make our team better. The writing was on the wall for the Charlotte Hornets head coach last year as well, and they went out and brought in a new head coach in Charles Lee from the Boston Celtics, lead assistant, and he's also trying to bring in some new culture with this Hornets team. So they went out and retooled the roster, and I think did some solid job in doing so. When looking at some re signings and who they brought back, they decided to bring back Seth Curry, who returned on a 1 year deal, and bring back Miles Bridges on a 3 year deal. Now, obviously, Miles Bridges coming back in the NBA, being able to play in the NBA is a whole other story. But for the Hornets being able to retain a player that is a solid player on their team, looking at it from a basketball perspective, that is a good thing. We're not going to be talking about the player. We're not going to be talking about should Miles Bridges be even in the league. That's a discussion for another video. For retaining a player that is still a solid, effective piece for their team, they did a good job. Could they have lost him and let him go to another team? Yes, but ultimately they decided to keep him. Looking at additions, this team made some big additions and a mistake on this website. I can tell you right now that Anton Watson is not on the Charlotte Hornets as he is on the Boston Celtics. So that is incorrect right there. But when looking at the other additions, they did bring in Josh Green in a trade with the Dallas Mavericks. They did go out and bring in Harry Giles on a 1 year deal in training camp. And they did go out and sign Taj Gibson to a 1 year deal. When looking at some departures, they did lose JT Thor, who went to the Cavaliers, but their other four departures were all players that were seemingly waived by this organization. Reggie Jackson was waived by the Charlotte Hornets once he was traded from the Denver Nuggets over here. Bryce McGowan's was a young prospect who showed some light last season. He was also waived maybe for bringing in some younger talent, but he has been signed with the Blazers and looked good in their summer league, so that's a little bit of a loss. And then Alexei Pukashevsky and Davis Bertans have both been waived as well by the Hornets. Two solid big men that are shooters in the league who have had a little bit of rough years the last couple of seasons. Both of those players have decided to go play in Europe, I believe, and pursuing careers over there. So they are both out of the NBA at this moment. So the Hornets realistically losing only two players in, or three players in Reggie Jackson, Bryce McGowan, and JT Thor, as two of them have left the NBA. Not bringing in Anton Watson either, as we can see from looking at their salary cap, courtesy of Spot Tracking Keith Smith, NBA, who does a fantastic job contributing for this site amongst many, many others. We can see that this Hornets team is constructed pretty solidly. LaMelo Ball, Miles Bridges, they're two highest paid players and they're two focal stones and corner pieces of this franchise. Grant Williams, Josh Green, newly acquired piece have been added to this core as well, making some decent money. And then there's some players down the list that, are a little bit younger. Their rookie in Brandon Miller last season. Their rookie this year in Tijon Saloon. I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name. Young players in Trey Mann, Mark Williams, and Vasily Misic could all be nice additions for this team and kind of setting the direction of how this Hornets culture wants to be embraced. Now, like I have mentioned, the Charlotte Hornets obviously brought in a new coach in Charles Lee, who had coached with the Boston Celtics last season, and he is going to bring in this new culture, this new type of fundamental style to Charlotte. And I think he's going to be a great addition for this locker room and to kind of set Charlotte in the right direction. Charlotte really hasn't had that blueprint, that laid out plan of we're going to grow, mature, and rise to the occasion. They have young players that come in. Some look good, some look bad. They never ultimately pan out. They have one good player star out, and then that player never gets enough talent to recoup around him to make Charlotte a good competing team. And then Charlotte ends up trading that player and just restarting the cycle over and over, trying to find that one piece once again. Well, Charlotte shouldn't have to worry because they have two young pieces that they can build on and contribute with LaMelo Ball and Brandon Miller. So let's dive in and let's look at some pieces on this team that I do like within this squad. And like I was just talking about one of those two pieces, let's dive in and let's talk about Brandon Miller. Now, Brandon Miller last year was the rookie from Alabama coming into the draft with some obligations and some weird stories going into it. But besides the fact, Miller was selected second overall by the Charlotte Hornets, in which most people thought that he shouldn't have been selected second overall, in which a player in Scoot Henderson should have been selected at two overall. Unfortunately for the Hornets, they already had a pretty solid guard tandem in LaMelo Ball already. They didn't need another guard and Scoot, so they went with Miller for the fit, and it ultimately worked out for their squad. Miller came out, showed out, and had a fantastic rookie year where he truly showed that he could be this wing scorer that everybody was writing him off on entering the NBA. He entered Charlotte being able to show that prowess, being able to play that two guard position, being able to play that three at the wing as well, and ultimately presents Charlotte with a lot of flexibility in creating their roster when adding pieces to this team. You could add a creative defensive guard in Josh Green to kind of similarly work along Brandon Miller, or if you wanted to play Brandon Miller at the two guard position, you could add in, a slashing, big length defending three in a player like maybe Herb Jones or a player in Tari Eason in the near future. I think that allows their flexibility to be great, and I ultimately think that Brandon Miller is going to turn into one of the top tier rookie slash players. He looked a lot better than Scoot Henderson last year. Scoot did deal with some injuries. Miller did look pretty solid, and with the Hornets having LaMelo Ball having a numerous amount of injury concerns, and this team not necessarily being the most favorable in the injury department the last couple seasons, we could see a player like Miller, if LaMelo is hurt once again this year, really transcend, really take over, and showcase to the world and to not only Hornets fans but the NBA that he could be a number one option with this Hornets team. If that takes place, if that is proven to be the case, then I think this is a different trajectory for the Hornets squad, and they have to look around building around Miller. At this moment, I still believe they're building around LaMelo Ball, using Miller as another star piece added on to it, trying to figure out ultimately who is going to be the best fit for this team and building this culture. Like I said, I think this Hornets team is still maybe a year or two away from making that culture push, but I still think that they have enough talent to make the play in with players like Miller as long as he steps up in his sophomore season. Another player that on this Hornets team that I would like to discuss as well, who I mentioned a little bit earlier in the episode here today, was Trey Mann. Now, Trey Mann was brought alongside in from Oklahoma City Thunder, alongside Vasily Misic, Davis Bertans, and Alexei Pukashevsky in the deal revolving around Gordon Hayward. Now, when a player in Trey Mann was brought over, he was obviously slated in that Oklahoma City Thunder group behind guys like Shai Alexander, like guys like Josh Giddey, like guys behind Case and Wallace. He never got that opportunity, and Trey Mann clearly showed that he could be that offensive scoring threat for this Hornets team as a starter or a backup. With LaMelo out, he really transcended being that starting point guard, being that focal point and offensive juice as a creative scorer and playmaker from all three levels for the Hornets. And I truly think he's going to bring that type of spark for this bench unit. I really, really like Trey Mann as this bench guard for this Hornets team. to provide that spark plug of scoring. He seemingly reminds me of a similar player that had played for the Hornets just a couple of seasons ago, in Devonte Graham, who created that offensive scoring and playmaking and effectability and worked seemingly very well with this Hornets team. And I think a player like Trey Mann, if he can kind of bring in that Devonte Graham-esque type of play style and Devonte Graham-esque type of offensive creation and scoring that he seemingly did, or even better than Devonte Graham in his own style, I think that he can seemingly play a similar role of that for this Hornets team, and I think that would be very beneficial for their second unit, especially with their second unit not having the most scoring and the best offensive players. It's really focused more on rebounding and preying on believing on young guys and believing on defense. I think having that secondary score is huge, with their offense having a lot of their scoring being added to it, with players like LaMelo, Brandon Miller. I like a majority of these teams. There's not really a player that I dislike with this Charlotte Hornets team, but I do want to talk about two players on this Charlotte Hornets team that I necessarily don't think fit or I am a little bit concerned of. The first one we're going to be talking is a little bit concerning of, and that is Mark Williams, as Mark Williams has suffered yet another injury leading into training camp and will be without at least the first 2 weeks of the season. For the Hornets, this is not a good sign. Their young center from Duke that they did draft in the first round has been fantastic as a shot blocker, rim protector, and truly been their cornerstone centerpiece that they've believed in and tried to building on. And pairing him alongside LaMelo as a lob threat, as a shot blocker, alongside Brandon Miller, alongside Miles Bridges, he seemingly fits and works. It is the perfect centerpiece that you could have at center, the perfect type of center that the Hornets had wanted over the last couple of years. They had been linked to Rudy Gobert for multiple seasons, never capitalized on it. Mark Williams presents that defensive pressure as similar to Rudy Gobert does, just at a younger age, cheaper contract. Ultimately, Williams just hasn't been able to stay healthy and stay on the court for the Hornets, and that has been a little bit of an issue. If Williams cannot maintain this, health and maintain staying healthy for his career, this could be an issue for him in pursuing getting a big time role as a starter, but also hinder the Hornets and also trying to figure out who their starter is going to be. Because the next player that I want to talk about, who I don't necessarily think fits in with this Hornets team, is a player in Nick Richards. Now, Richards is their other center on this roster, so seemingly with Williams being out, they have to keep Richards to ensure that they have a center under contract. But also, I don't necessarily think Richards kind of fits in. Richards brings seemingly what Williams does bring already: rebounding, defensive pressure, just at a cheaper contract and at a cheaper value or estimated value that you would be willing to invest in said player. Still think Richards can be still a quality starting center in the NBA, even high quality backup big as he's provided with this Charlotte Hornets team. But ultimately, since he brings the same thing that Mark Williams does already bring for your Hornets team, having both of these guys when fully healthy on this roster doesn't make any sense to me. I think having a center similar to an offensive type of big, a guy like Bertans or like Pokashevsky, that could work in Charles Lee's offense. We saw Charles Lee with the Celtics last season utilize Kristaps Porzingis to one of his best abilities, and I think if he had a backup center or a center like that who is skilled at the offensive side, that could help translate to maybe a Kristaps Porzingis build or just helping in developing a nice backup center. That's how I kind of see teams kind of building. I like when teams, like if you've seen my past videos, try to go off on a little bit of a tangent here. But as you guys, have seen from past videos, like Davion Mitchell and Emmanuel Quickly, or Dyson Daniels and Trey Young, I really like those guard combos because one of those starting guards is really good on offense and the backup guard is really good on defense. With the Hornets here, both of their centers basically do the same exact thing. So yeah, when Mark Williams is hurt and when Mark Williams is going through injuries, it's still nice to have that rim protection, still nice to have that secondary shot blocker in Nick Richards. When Mark Williams is healthy, that's what you have at the center position for both folds. You don't have a spacing big. You don't have that stretch big, which allows teams to exploit that and utilize that if they do on their end. Ultimately, I think it's a lose-lose situation for the Hornets, and there are plenty of teams that would be interested in a player in Richards for the value that he can bring and for the contract that he's on as well. So I seemingly think once Mark Williams is back, once he's healthy, once there are no setbacks with Mark, we could see a trade with Nick Richards happen by the trade deadline because I think the Hornets would be a team that would be willing to give up Nick Richards, specifically if there are a lot of teams that are wanting centers on the market. Before we sign off and say goodbye, we got to get into that prediction record overall for this team. So let's get into that before we say goodbye. Like I said, I believe the Hornets are going to finish 40 and 42 this season. That is my record prediction. And they will be at ninth place, I believe, in the Eastern Conference with my predictions. Go back and look and check that. But I believe This is the 10th team that we are breaking down, and this would be the ninth seed in the Eastern Conference here for us. So let us know what you think down below in the comment section. Do you think the Hornets at 9 coming in are too high, too low? Where would you predict them? Are there any analyzations on Brandon Miller, Trey Man that you think I got wrong? Do you feel any higher on any of these players that I didn't mention? Player like Grant Williams or possibly even Josh Green? Let me know down below in the comment section how you guys feel about this team. Once again, I really do appreciate all your luck, all your guys' support, tuning into the channel here. Really has meant a lot as we revitalize this channel and getting this channel back in going for the start of the NBA season. And like I said, I'm going to have content coming out here all NBA season long, all leading up to the offseason as well. So if you want to make sure you stay updated on everything revolving around the NBA as fast as I can try to get it out to you, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, drop down in the comments what you want to see added to the channel. And once again, I'm Bruce Veliz. Thank you guys so much for tuning into this episode. Have a great rest of your day, and peace out, everyone.